We take a single episode of a science fiction TV series and overanalyze it to within an inch of its life. This is the Fusion Patrol Podcast. Welcome to the discussion. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Ben.
And tonight we're going to be looking at the classic 1970s Canadian TV series, The Starlost. The episode, The Implant People, by Helen French and Martin Lager.
When was this show regarded as a classic? Since we started reviewing it?
Yes, I think since we started reviewing it, it's taken on classic status.
Classic by Fusion Patrol standards.
Fusion by Fusion Patrol standards, yes. All right, well, let's start off with a brief synopsis of this briefly synopted episode. The Insipid Trio are resting in a corridor. Garth is being bitchy, ready to return to Cypress Corners because they might die in this empty corridor. While they rest, a boy comes and steals Garth's crossbow. Following him, he finds a hidden biosphere and a group of frightened scientists with implants in their heads, led by a man named Brant. The biosphere is ruled by Serena, the widowed queen, and her advisor, Roloff. Serena lives a life of seclusion, blocked away from her people. Her only go-between is Roloff. In the lab, the scientists ask for help, but then turn the Insipid Trio into the authorities. Roloff talks to them and tells them his side of the story, and they're convinced that he's the good guy, except perhaps Garth. He seems more suspicious. Roloff tells them about the brain implants and how they were designed to improve brain function. Roloff offers the plant to the Insipid Trio to help them on their quest to save the Ark. Once away from them, Roloff goes to the scientist and tortures him with his implant, demanding his continued obedience. Then, he turns on the elected council and dissolves them, claiming it is on the Queen's orders. Roloff convinces Devon and Garth to have the implant, only if Roloff will have it first. Roloff agrees, but at the last moment knocks Devon unconscious and has him implanted. Garth escapes to the council, now a group of frightened rebels. They explain to Garth that the implants don't help brain function, but impart massive pain. Brant tricks Roloff into thinking Devon's implant is a fake. Garth gets the drop on them, but they escape with a portable implant removal device. Having removed their implants, Devon inspires them to rebellion, while Roloff captures the Queen, Rachel, Garth, and the little boy. When the rebels arrive at his door, they find it locked, and the rebellion seems doomed. The boy makes an attempt to the door, and their salvation comes from an unexpected quarter. Free of their implants, but still utterly useless, the Insipid Trio leave on their never-ending and seemingly pointless quest. Okay, so how much did you love this episode?
I felt like I was watching old-time melodrama set in space, and that you were supposed to cheer the heroes and boo the villain. But in this case, while I did boo the villain, I found myself, instead of cheering the heroes, I was jeering the heroes.
Wow. Well, I can't disagree with that. This is one seriously talky episode, and nothing ever happens in it. It really...
And what little that does happen is very, very bad.
But I
very
do,
stupid.
I do want to say that the ending is possibly the greatest thing I've ever seen on Canadian television.
Since Towel Whips.
So, yeah, since Towel Whips, yes, indeed. So I want to save that for the extra special bonus at the end. Because we might as well save the best for last.
Might as well. Although I will start this off with a little bit of a bang. I found that Serena was rather familiar to me, so I kind of looked her up, and I was shocked. Shocked, I say. To find out who she really was.
She was
Pat Collins, known today as the Hypnotist.
The Hypnotist.
Yes,
no, I don't know who that is.
Oh, she had a monthly show on Showtime, and she'd actually been hired by the LA Police Department on numerous occasions to help witnesses put them into a relaxed hypnotic state to help them recall certain events. I mean, read into that as you will. She's enormously popular. I've seen her show live, and while I found her effects to be completely useless on me, they seem to work on other people. Anyway, before she was, I had no idea that she was an actress before she became, or before she took on the career of being the hypnotist.
I'm not sure that you could argue that her career was as an actress at this point.
Well, that she was okay. She was doing television.
Yeah. Okay, so you say she's tried to hypnotize you and it didn't work?
Didn't work at all.
Okay,
No
let me test something. I have a way of testing that.
Oh, good.
All right, I'm going to say part of a sentence, and I want to see if you can finish it. Okay? Are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah. It was better than cats.
What was?
Well, now, okay, maybe it didn't work. I thought anyone who'd ever been hypnotized would know the correct code sequence to that one. It's supposed to be,
Sorry.
I intend to see it again and again.
Sounds like you're in a hypnotic trance.
Could be. I may have been put there by listening to the worse than usual dialogue and speaking, and
it was cliche at times.
to say that they were phoning in their performances is insulting. Phoning in performances. I couldn't believe how utterly I felt like they were recording the walkthrough.
You know, given the placement of this series in the production order, and given everything that they had gone through when making this series up to this point, it is very possible that maybe I don't know if you can say they saw the writing on the wall, but I think maybe they became rather disheartened and just didn't feel any, not that they really felt a lot of it, but whatever little bit of motivation that they had to do the show could have been completely stamped out by that point.
It's the only thing I can think of, because it really sets a new bar. This episode, to me, sets a new bar in awful. It's not awful like Man from Atlantis, the Imp, which was awful because of the way that they opened a wound and then rubbed salt in it. This was
void of any substance at all.
Yes, it was completely void of anything, and they spent far too much time, well, just talking about, intrigues that weren't even very intriguing, and bombs that we never saw go off, or political intrigue with the council and the people and the reforms and stuff that really just, all they were doing was killing time. And
one thing that I noticed, that I found myself more engaged in finding all the things that were wrong, being very nitpicky about this episode, than actually being able to sit down and absorb it for what it was. I mean, even with The Man from Atlantis, there was something there. It was awful, but it was there. There was something that I could look at the entire story and just pick holes in it. With this, I found myself picking holes in like its scenery, things like that, or just the most trivial stuff, because that was of greater interest than any semblance of plot.
I have to say, there was a chair that was more interesting in this story than Devon.
The chair had more action than Devon.
And more action than Devon, too. It was more effective than Devon at times. So one of the things we've talked about with the Starlost is that, and this is true with many shows that we've talked about, even Star Trek to some degree, is the big reset at the end of the episode. And I don't mean it like a Stephen Moffat, Russell T Davies reset. I'm talking about where
nothing has changed.
Nothing has really changed at the end, because it's not serialized, but it's a episodic series that, when one writer creates a new way of using the transporter, the next writer doesn't know it, and so therefore we never see that again. And that's bad for some part, and I will say that is an improvement of modern series. Much though I'm not exactly enamored of the long arc, at least a story that has a little progression of the way that things is good. But in the Starlost,
There's no progression.
Not only is there no progression, but they're not even, the characters aren't even the same from episode to episode. I mean, what was with Garth in this episode?
Oh, he was just bitchy, bitchy, bitchy today.
He was like
Nothing made him happy.
whining about sleeping in a corridor. He's like, well, we found this empty corridor. It's like, haven't you found like thousands of other empty corridors and had to sleep in them? And he's like, oh, it's so cold and we could die here, and it's a crazy thing you made us go on. It's like, what?
And this actually, here's, as I said earlier, I found myself just really picking on trivial things. Here is something that I view to be really trivial, but it just glared at me as I was watching this. I think it's safe to assume that the Insipid Trio, they've been on their little arc crusade for a time now.
Yeah,
they visited various communities, both in biospheres and not. Come across all sorts of interesting places throughout the arc, and yet at no point have they ever found anything that even resembles, even remotely, camping supplies.
That's true. If they just found a little blanket or something. Now, we did see them in one biosphere where they
found
were
beds.
tucking in on food. Yeah, beds and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, but they were there. And you'd think that they would have found something after all this time, but no, they just curl up on the hard floor. And to me, that just struck me as being ridiculous.
Amongst many other things, yes, I completely agree.
That was the beginning of the ridiculous.
It almost feels like somebody had only seen or heard the very, very first episode where Garth was still adversarial.
So would that? So now this begs an interesting question. Is it possible that every single episode that we have seen so far is basically a quote-unquote sequel to the first episode?
Yeah, I think that's true. There's no continuity between any of them except the first one and the second one. It's all in... Actually, I think it's all in Devin's mind. I think in the last episode of the show, we're going to find out that he's actually like an insane guy in an asylum on 1950s Earth, and this is his fantasy. Because I can't imagine this is any resemblance of being a real adventure in space.
No, not really, no.
No. If only they had finished the series so that we could have seen that epic moment where he came out of it and found out his hospital room was the Hyde ward or something. So we have bitchy Garth, and
who allows to have his crossbow stolen by a kid, at which neither Devin nor Rachel wake up despite that incredible ruckus.
Well,
Again,
they were
trivial.
really tired.
Yeah, it's trivial, but I'm sorry, I couldn't let that one go.
And what else is there? This is an episode that I struggle to find something to talk about.
Well, like I said, I was just picking on just little menial things because that's the only thing that was there for me to grab onto.
Well, then I guess we can just go on to the ending. This could be the shortest episode of Fusion Patrol ever.
Well, no, I mean, we can pick on a couple of little things here. I mean, as you said earlier, there was this kid who stole Garth's crossbow, and that's when Garth came across this group of scientists. And then, they end up waking up Devin and Rachel. They join. And then, of course, as you said, the scientist Brant, he sells out our trio. But the thing that really kind of floored me is our little rugrat, or street urchin, whatever you want to call him. Mm-hmm. He's making his way through a trap door.
Mm-hmm.
And he motions to Garth to follow him. And so Garth does. And they just blindly leave the trapdoor open, and nobody even bothers to go look to find where they may be. Oh, they've disappeared.
Yeah, once they're gone, whoo, bing, gone.
Yeah. And the other thing that really kind of bugged me is, well, again, this points to the whole continuity thing we were discussing earlier. Granted, I'm looking at this from the point of view of someone who has watched the series from the beginning. However, assuming that this is yet the next in a series of adventures, I find Devon's and Rachel's gullible nature
Wow.
in Roloff
Wow.
to be just
Gullible.
beyond. Oh, it was absurd.
It
The
was.
stupidity. I mean, this was just blind stupidity on their part. Garth wasn't much better, but at least he expressed a doubt.
They were particularly gullible and gullible without acting about it. I mean, oh, okay, now that you've explained it.
Yeah, when they and then finally when they confront Roloff, when they learn the truth, they confront Roloff, and this is where it got really melodramatic and cliche because the actor gives off this most ridiculous, quote unquote, diabolical laugh, and then he even admits to them that he is evil and corrupt. And I thought, this has become the most two-dimensional villain the show has ever given us.
He could have been
more so
slightly
than any other.
He could have been slightly more two-dimensional. He could have had a handlebar mustache, which he could have twirled.
That would have made it better. I would have laughed at that. I would have found that funny. Because then I would have realized that what I was watching was actually satire.
Well, yes, I suppose you could look at it that way. It's hard, knowing what we know about the Starlost, it's hard to believe that you could take it as satire, though. Be like a funny episode of the show to break up the others. I don't know.
Well, and if we're going to talk about plot, there is one glaring plot hole that just really stuck in my craw. And that is the nature of the implants and the ease in which to remove them.
Well, they're just stuck on there with tape.
But if we're going to suspend disbelief, and there's a lot of disbelief that needs to be suspended here, if we're going to accept that these implants do what they do, and that they're these horrible torture devices,
Mm-hmm.
If they could have been removed that easily, that quickly, why the hell didn't the scientists do that originally and then maybe replace them with dummies just to spare themselves any kind of discomfort and then organize a huge rebellion against Roloff?
Well, I think I can answer that question.
Oh, please. Because there'd be no story?
Yeah, okay, so here's the answer to that question. And this is not going to be the answer you expect. The lead writer on this episode was one Helen French, who I checked up on and has written or worked in the television industry on absolutely nothing before or after this episode. Not one credit of any kind except for this. And it shows.
I'd like to know why.
This is one of those high school students. It has to be.
It must be.
There's no bio on her. There's no nothing. We can't track it down and say, yeah, while she was in Canada high school, or whatever they call the high school they have up in Canada, she was selected from a writing class in freshman English to write an episode of The Starlost. Now, I have to say, though, the guy who worked with her, Martin Lager, has written other things. He has some 88 credits, including many producer credits, but he also has 4 writing credits, 3 others besides this one, in The Starlost. He wrote some of our favorites.
Oh, no.
The Goddess Calabra,
Ew.
with its famous towel.
The towel scene.
The towel scene.
whipping.
He wrote The Astromedics, with its incredibly plot-contrived way of not solving their problems. And he wrote a future episode we've yet to see called Space Precinct, not to be confused with the Jerry Anderson TV series Space Precinct.
Isn't that like the last episode? Or towards the end of the series?
I believe so. I believe so. I think it is the last episode, if it's the one I'm thinking of. But so he has a very distinguished career on the Starlost, and it's shining through here in spades, or not, as the case may be. Maybe he had to rewrite Helen French's story to make it better.
Oh.
The towel attack in the Goddess Calabra, which, as you know, we laughed at immensely. But try to envision this scene. The council, the elected council, they've had their implants removed. They've learned that their queen has not been doing mean things to them for years, but that Roloff has been manipulating the situation so that he tells them one story and he tells the queen another story, all in an effort to consolidate his own power. And he's got bombs to blow them up in case they get uppity. He's got the pain-giving devices, and they've had them removed. And the scientists, they've had them removed. And he's lost everything except his four hostages.
Baton.
Yeah, and his baton and his four hostages, who are the queen, who, all right, fine, but she really hasn't been helping you out much. And then Garth and Rachel, who are completely worthless in this episode, despite the fact that Garth actually has been the most useful person in this episode, and yet somehow he ends up being one of the prisoners doing nothing at the end. And you have Devon saying, you guys should do something about this. I think maybe it's just a thought that I had here that maybe somehow some sort of, I don't know, rebellion or something might have kind of thing. I don't know. He's not even doing a good Woody Allen in this episode. And they all storm the palace, or whatever you want to call it, and they're outside that door, and or Iris, as they like to call him, and he pounding on the Iris. It's like, let us in, let us in. And he's in there going, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin. And his theory is that they'll eventually give up if they knock on the door long enough. Because
they know that the street urchin, whose name was Jarly, I think.
I did not write it down. He's just a street urchin.
I believe his name, Jardy. Jardy, that's his name.
Jardy Lafarge.
Jardy Lafarge.
Jardy Lafarge.
Is Jardy Lafarge?
He was a fine young lad, he was.
He's a fine young lad's a hostage of Roloff.
But he, unlike the other hostages, is not pinned up in an immobilization wall. And so when they knock on the door and they say, let us in, and he says, I'm not going to let you in, young Jardy leaps up from the place where he's, I don't know, just kind of lying on the floor.
He's kind of like crouching near a desk.
And he plunges his hand forward so that he can touch the green styrofoam mat that is the door opening mechanism. And our villain leaps up from the chair to chase the little boy to prevent him from doing that. And he gets his two left feet tangled up in a chair and falls over and incapacitates himself. Story over.
Pretty much it.
It has to be the most amazing. I mean, my jaw dropped. I could not believe that this episode ended with the villain tripping himself into defeat.
I remember you had warned me ahead of time that there was something coming up it would put the towel scene to shame. So I just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. Then the scene comes up, and I went, yep, that was it.
That was it? Yeah, that was it. He fell over a chair. Devon does nothing. I mean, none of the bad guys come barging, the good guys. They were all bad. I meant bad acting guys. None of the rebels come barging through the door and punch him, or Devon doesn't bitch slap him with his mustache or anything. I mean, nothing. He just trips over a chair and he's kind of lying there going, oh, curses. I'd have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you pesky rebels and this chair.
If it not been for the meddling kids. It was not even worthy of Scooby-Doo.
No, it was just, it's like...
I mean, it really was curses foiled again kind of thing.
It's as if they wrote in, villain gets incapacitated in the story, in the plot script, and then the director looked at it and goes, well, there's a chair, okay, and couldn't come up with anything that would be better.
There was so many better ways they could have done that.
And of course, there's the scene where one of the council member wants to have him implanted and tortured, and then one of the other guys says, "No, we shouldn't do that. It's not nice." And then of course they, carry on with their whole, "We're really sorry, Devin, but we're completely useless to you. We can't help with this thing with the Ark, but
Good luck.
we wish you best of luck and have some fun." And off they go. Staggeringly bad episode of television. Staggeringly bad.
Yeah, I would have to say that this of all the, I mean, I've seen some Starlost episodes that were just god awful bad. This one,
Have you seen any that weren't?
well, no. But I think in this case, I mean, there was something that was going on in each one of them. This one was just a big flat nothing.
Mm-hmm. It really was. It was a big flat nothing. I mean, there was just nothing to recommend it.
No, really, nothing at all. There's no substance to this episode at all. And like I said, that's why I just kept picking on the little tiny, pulling at the threads of the story, what little story there was, because that's all there was.
So I have a confession. I think I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. I don't believe that I saw the Starlost on its first run. I know you did, but I'm reasonably sure that I never saw it. And my first exposure to it was one of the Starlog episode guides, where they would, list out the episodes, and I'm like, wow, this is a show I really wish I could have seen. And then, of course, over the years, you hear the legend of how bad it is and awful. And then the DVDs came out, and I had to get the DVDs. I mean, I got the DVDs because,
now there's curiosity, and especially when you hear about how bad the show is.
You can't believe it.
Yeah,
right?
You want to see how bad can really be.
So I watched, I don't know, 8 episodes of the Starlost maybe before we started the podcast. So the first 8 episodes or so, I had already seen prior to watching them for the podcast. But now we are into I've not finished watching the Starlost. I have no idea what's coming. I've never seen the episodes. I'm completely ignorant of how bad they are, except for what I know from like the Starlog plot synopsis written up all those years ago and kind of stored away in my memory. So, this episode doesn't sound that bad in, a 3-sentence synopsis, but it's not until you really see it. You can really grab the depths of how bad this series really was. And so this is really being driven home to me when I see these totally fresh and totally new, and it's just a slog even to get through the episode. It's like, something happen. Something.
Well, what bugs me, I think back to Astromedics, and I can't remember the name of. Oh darn! Can't remember the one episode where they miniaturize themselves.
Fantastic Journey.
No. Computer circuit, something like that.
Circuits of Death?
Something like that, I think so.
Circuitry of Death, yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And I remember at the time thinking, as a kid, wow, this is really awesome. Well, I had nothing to compare it to. I mean, not at that time. I mean, the last science fiction I saw prior to that on television was Star Trek. So I had been on something of a diet of new sci-fi. So Starlost comes around, I started watching it. And I remember I liked the pilot, I liked Astromedics, and I liked Circuits of Death. Then I rewatched them.
And you didn't.
Well, I remember you came over to our house to shows that you had the DVDs, and I remember looking at, oh my God, this is awesome! Can't wait! Start watching. I mean, I got 10 minutes into the first episode, and I thought, oh my God, this is really just sucky.
But you know what? I think we're on the downside now. I think we're working our way towards the end of the line.
We are past the midway point, no
yes,
question.
Yes, we are. We are over the hump, and we're
fact,
sliding down into the cesspool at the end.
I think I know what the next Starlost episode is, and I think it is the return of Oro.
Oh, oh.
Yeah, I
Haven't
thought
we done that?
No, that was just the alien Oro.
Well, I've seen the return of Oro, so maybe I can't believe I skipped ahead just to see a Walter Koenig episode. No, that doesn't sound right at all. I mean, maybe I thought he was going to get killed. I might have watched it for that.
Can't tell you. All I know is that from what I read, I think that's the next one. Because we haven't reviewed it yet.
Maybe I'm just making it up in my head. I mean, it's got to be better than anything they're going to put down on paper or in the episode.
So I'm trying to think. When do you think you might have seen it?
The only time I could possibly have seen it was right after watching the Alien Oro. I might have jumped ahead just to see, first off, how bad the Alien Oro was, and then but you see, I don't remember it. I just sort of remember. I remember him returning.
I just remember the opening, the first part where Oro shows up and introduces himself to Devon.
Oh wait, I've seen it on YouTube and probably just a brief clip. That could explain it. Anyway, unfortunately, we're gonna have to watch the whole episode.
Well, I'm kind of curious to see how ridiculous it is. Because from what I remember, in the opening, there's yet again another contradiction about Oro himself. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I mean, we've already taken our pot shots at Alien Oro and what a terrible story that was.
Yes, capped off with some of the finest acting yet. Although no, this acting in this episode was worse. It really was bad. I mean, it was notably bad in a group of people who are not. I don't know what the deal is with Keir Dullea. He was reasonably competent in 2001.
And at one time, he was actually rated as, in his day, before he even got the part of Dave Bowman, Keir Dullea was regarded as, he was the actor to look out for because his star was shining, and everybody kept saying, this guy, he's intense, he's amazing, he's this, he's that, and he plays Bowman rather well. But Bowman was not a very complex character.
I was going to say Bowman was very. We can put this on Kubrick, but Bowman was very quiet and reserved and just talked a little.
Very restrained.
Restrained, so you don't really get a lot of acting out of it. It's really not.
But it's better in 2001 than what we're seeing here in Starlost. The acting in this, I would have expected better from Keir Dullea, and it's I'm not getting it.
Yeah, he must be having some problem or something. Maybe that mustache has grown into his brain.
Well, one thing that I do suspect, I don't know if it was you who sent me the YouTube link or not, but at some point I saw a video, and there was Keir Dullea, and there was I can't think of his name now. Special effects guy.
Dykstra.
Not Dextra, no.
Oh.
The other guy.
The other guy.
Trumbull. Douglas Trumbull. Douglas Trumbull. You see Keir Dullea and Douglas Trumbull together, and they are talking about the series. They even mention Harlan Ellison. I get the feeling that this was a series pitch.
Yeah. I know which video you're talking about.
And I think that at that time, because there was the whole idea as to how Doug wanted to do some really state-of-the-art effects to help create virtual sets, if you will.
Right.
And, of course, that all fell apart. They all started using chroma key. And the story started coming in. They were terrible. Harlan Ellison totally divorced himself from the project. Everybody else hated it. And I think at that point, Keir Dullea just started saying, you know what, this series is going to stink, so I'm not really even going to try.
I think that we have reached the end of this episode of the Starlost and talked it down. I think I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that if I'm reading it right, you didn't like this episode.
Not in the slightest.
Oh, okay. Just checking. And I'm going to say, in case it wasn't obvious, I didn't like it either. I really thought the chair did well. And it moved faster than any of the other characters too. When it was tumbling over with the bad guy's legs trapped in, wow, it really did.
It showed real acting motivation. I was impressed.
I was genuinely impressed with that chair. I don't know how they get that stunt chair in there. Still looked good. Didn't look like a stunt chair. Looked like a real chair, and did a bang up job. So that's it for this week. And I hope you'll join us again next time on Fusion Patrol.
End of line.
Fusion Patrol is a Lone Locust production. Like us, leave us a review on iTunes. Or stop by and visit at our website, fusionpatrol.com. Find us on Facebook or Twitter. Search for Fusion Patrol. Or just drop us a note at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. Our music is Fight the Future by Amber Wolf.